Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO Bite-Sized podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rides, and in these bite-sized episodes, we'll be speaking to experienced cybersecurity hiring managers. We'll be asking their advice on how you can stand out from the crowd to make the career moves you desire.
I truly believe that we have the hardest job, function and job role in an organization, because we have to be right all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not only that, but we have to know the entire business. It's not, one department, and I'm a subject matter expert of one department organization. I have to be a subject matter expert in every single department in the organization. I need to understand how they work, how they operate, what are the processes, what are the intricacies, what are the interdependencies. I need to understand how the business makes money. I need to understand how I could potentially affect from them, if I implement a certain control, how that may affect them making money. I need to understand how, if someone was to attack a business unit, a business process, an entity, one of our third parties, how that would affect our organization. How would we be either fined or some type of investigation or lawsuit might come into play. I need to understand all of that.
It's funny because what you're talking about there as an attribute is knowing and understanding the business, and that's probably the number one attribute of when I've been speaking to all of these different CISOs. Business continually came up, and so I went out to like 500 CISOs over the last couple of years and asked them, what are the three attributes you think you need to be? And again, business number one. And I think that's something that people that are a little bit earlier in their career need to kind of realize, that it's never too early to understand the business you work for. Understand what your impact is. If you're an individual contributor, you still have an impact on that business. And I think the earlier you understand that, that's probably rocket fuel for a career.
It is. And that's why I go back to, I think the path that I took and those opportunities that I was given has empowered me to be, the leader that I am today and be successful in how I manage the program.
I talk to so many CISOs and, adding value and being a good listener, understanding the business. Like, all of these are skill sets that a CISO needs, whether, you're a current CISO or it's something you're aspiring to, or even if you're earlier on in your career. Like, these are the sort of conversations you need to be having, because if you understand the business and you understand the stakeholders, you can provide value.
My initial kind of approach is to see what the executive team is doing and what's on their mind and what's their objectives, and not to really be too concerned about talking about risk and only things that I'm interested in trying to address, but really try to figure out how I can help them and how I can be a partner from the business standpoint, which is what we do all the time anyways. But it's really just diving into what's top of mind. And yes, you get into what's keeping them up at night. And it could be something that's recent, whatever it might be. But ultimately, they have their objectives that they need to execute on. Now they're starting to trickle down to their teams. And my main thing is, all right, how can I get involved and how can I help? And yes, I will align with some of the stuff that's been talked about before from a risk management standpoint and really the interest from the security technology team. But ultimately, it's a refresh. All right, let's just dive in and see where I can help.
And then hopefully people are thinking of, the cybersecurity team as not the cost center, but the enabler, right? And that's so important.
Exactly. It's the enabling aspect that's the most important, and understand how the executives and the team is going to be getting the bonus, how they're incentivized to get this. And then ultimately you align with that, you'll get your stuff done as well, and you'll probably address a few risks along the way.
Whatever you're bonused on is what the company is obviously targeting for you to do, and I want my security to be something that helps you achieve that rather than stops you. So
exactly.
I think there's,
especially when you take a look at like objectives, business objectives that trickle all the way down to the individual contributors. Everything should be aligned, and there's no other way to do it than really understanding how the executives are going to ultimately get paid if they meet their objectives. Now, when you tie in, again, alignment with risk and things from a security and technology standpoint, makes it a heck of a lot easier discussion when you actually talk about how it's going to impact your objectives. We should try to figure out how to make this work.
I think a good CISO needs to sit back and listen to everything and understand. So I go out to the other business functions, HR, marketing, sales, you know, whatever it is. And I sit down with them and just learn about what they do and how they fit into the business. I don't ask them for anything necessarily. I build up that rapport with them by listening and understanding their challenges and what they need to do and get done. And so that way, when I, have a project or effort that I need their support with, then I can go to them and I can bring them something that's reasonable because I already know what their challenges are and what they face day to day. So I'll build out a new process or something that already fits their challenges or their way of working into it. And then collaborate on finalizing that. And it just, and then building up that rapport. If I really need them to do something, or there's incident, I've got to have them shut down something or whatever it is, they realize that that's something really important, and they'll go do it. As opposed to every month there's a new emergency that they got to work on. It gets old and they don't listen after a while.
Yeah.
So just that communication, that building the rapport, that listening, I think is really key.
It's the classic tale of the boy that cried wolf, right?
Exactly.
You cry wolf enough times, eventually people start ignoring you, and so building that rapport and knowing that when you've got a really big ask, you wouldn't normally be asking for it, and when you do have an ask, you've already pre-thought about what they need. They take that seriously, right? I think the communication, the communication stuff is something that I think we can all work on for sure. And is there anything you've done particularly to sort of improve your communication skills? Anything that you'd recommend for others that need to do better at that?
It's work in progress for sure, but for me, it's worked really well of being fairly not highs and lows of, oh God, we got this, we got to do it. It's more of just staying somewhat mellow or even keeled with talking to them and with anybody, and not getting flustered or minimizing the amount of fluster no matter what's going on. And it helps calm everybody down and help everybody think clearly for what we need to do, as opposed to kind of creating chaos.
Yeah.
So I think just that, and being careful of how you say things. Again, it kind of goes back to people perceiving things differently. It's really important of how you express something. So a risk or asking them to do something, it might be important for you, it's not that important for them. So you've got to help them understand why it's important, how it's important for them, and what the priority is, and then help them work through that, as opposed to saying, all right, we're going to do this.
Yeah, 100%. So communication skills, number one. What's your next attribute?
Next one is being able to translate technology to business at the CISO level. Or this, running a program, you've really got to be able to do that. And we were talking about earlier with the boardroom training. I highly recommend it. It really changed my thinking around to what the board and ELT really focus on from a business perspective, and it's different than what I really thought. And so it helped a lot. I was doing good. I was getting the point across, but still maybe a little too much detail or a little too much technical focus. But now it's again, continuous learning, improvement. But it's really important to be able to change that vulnerability on a server into why it's important to the business, and then provide options. Hey, we can just leave it there. We can, put a workaround in maybe, or we can actually do something about it. And this is what it means to the business for each of those options.
Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO Bite Size podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you keep an eye out for Season 3 of the full Route to CISO podcast. And in the meantime, stay up to date by liking, commenting, and of course, subscribing to our channel. Thank you.